Morbid Facts. Italian man Marco Mariolini earned the nickname Anorexic Hunter due to his disturbing fixation towards emaciated women. But he wasn't simply drawn to women who were already thin. He wanted to actively shape them into emaciation by pushing their bodies to extreme levels of malnutrition. He made his wife starve herself, making her lose more than 70 pounds until he eventually broke up with her once he got her pregnant. Marco then started dating a woman named Monica, whom he would punch in the stomach if she ate anything he considered excessive. He would even take her to nice restaurants where he would eat in front of her while she was forced to starve. One day Monica had enough and attacked him with a hammer before later turning herself in, only to end up facing house arrest with her monstrous partner. Marco would end up fatally stabbing her 22 times in retribution, and only spent a few years in prison before being released in 2021. By the way, I have no idea what's going on with that facial hair. It's totally unrelated to the story. Trust me, I have so many questions myself. Cyclopia is a real congenital disorder marked by the failure of the embryo to properly divide the orbits of the eyes into two separate cavities, resulting in a single eye in the middle of the face. It's usually caused by a mutation in the Sonic the Hedgehog gene, real, and typically results in death within a few hours after birth. The tragic condition occurs in 1 out of every 200 miscarried fetuses, and the maximum recorded lifespan of a child born with cyclopia is 1 day. Following the murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, people have been putting up wanted posters across New York City targeting other healthcare CEOs. The posters read, "Healthcare CEOs should not feel safe," after his 28-year-old teacher allegedly made creepy remarks to a 6th grade girl. A young student catfished the man and made him think he was talking to a 14-year-old girl. After receiving concerning messages from the teacher, the boy reported him to police, and he now faces charges of sexual exploitation. Amanda Eller was lost for 17 days in the Maui wilderness after a 3-mile hike turned into a full-on nightmare. She set out on foot without a phone, food, or water since she only planned to be out for a short adventure. But after veering off the trail, she wasn't able to find her way back. The 35-year-old later managed to survive a flash flood with a broken leg and suffered many hallucinations throughout the ordeal. She said she kept hearing voices that were telling her what to do if she wanted to survive. Amanda was eventually spotted by a helicopter pilot who turned a different way that nobody would normally search on a whim. In 2022, an Irish woman was hospitalized with extreme stomach pain and had to have her appendix removed after years of holding in farts around her boyfriend. Constance Fisher was a paranoid schizophrenic who murdered her 3 children in 1954 to save them from evil. She spent several years in a mental asylum before being released, only to kill 3 more of her children in 1966. In 2002, Pennsylvania mother Brenda Heist completely disappeared after dropping her 2 kids off at school. 11 years later, she was found living with a group of homeless people in Key West, Florida. Investigators found out she was upset about an upcoming divorce and wanted to completely abandon her life as she knew it. Brenda survived by living under bridges and eating scraps of food until she got tired of running and decided to turn herself in. Her family wanted nothing to do with her since they thought she'd been dead for years, and her ex-husband was even treated as a suspect for her supposed murder. Just last year, 16-year-old Marie Antoinette Coutillo tragically died after her phone fell into the bathtub while she was on a call with her friend. She'd been charging her phone while using it and apparently dropped it in the water at some point, resulting in her electrocution. Marie was eventually found unresponsive by her parents and rushed to the hospital, but doctors were unable to save her. The 1985 film Mask is based on the true story of Rocky Dennis, an American boy with an extremely rare bone disorder. It causes bone to build up excessively in the skull, resulting in compression of the brain. Doctors initially told him he would die before his 7th birthday, but Rocky ended up living to the age of 16. After being told he would die if he didn't change his habits, a morbidly obese Scottish man went an entire year without eating any food. The 450-pound 27-year-old only consumed multivitamins and potassium tablets for 382 days, only going number 2 once every 40 to 50 days. He set a record for the longest fast ever recorded and ended up losing 275 pounds. French chemist Antoine Lavoisier wanted to perform one last experiment before he was executed in 1792. He told his colleague he would try to blink as long as possible after being beheaded by a guillotine. Some sources say he continued to blink for up to 10 seconds afterwards. In 1983, Diane Downs shot her 3 young children and then drove them to the hospital at less than 10 miles per hour. Her 7-year-old daughter had already passed by the time she arrived, while her other 2 kids were in critical condition. Diane had also shot herself in the forearm and claimed that someone tried to carjack her. But in reality, she was having an affair with a married man who didn't like kids, so she wanted to dispose of them so she could be with him. Downs was sentenced to life in prison, and the lead prosecutor adopted her 2 kids that survived. Here's an 1870 photo of an Indian guru wearing an iron collar so he could never lay down. He did this by choice as a sign of devotion to his religion, believing that suffering allows one to grow closer to the spiritual. In 2019, Fred Pepperman swam out to rescue his 3 daughters who were caught in a riptide on a Florida beach. After saving them all, he fell unconscious and passed away on the way to the hospital. His final words to them were, "I got you." This is one of the worst cases of Munchausen syndrome by proxy ever seen by doctors. For years, Kelly Ronahan was thought to be suffering from a mysterious illness that caused her to frequently lose blood and required weekly transfusions. But once doctors started catching on that Kelly was likely draining her own blood to appear anemic, she moved on to a new health issue. She allegedly started picking at her legs, putting chemicals on them, and rubbing all sorts of substances and dirt into the wounds. Soon enough, her legs got so bad that Kelly needed a muscle transplant and skin grafts to cover up the holes. After being discharged from the hospital, she continued picking at the scabs and causing further damage, eventually turning parts of her legs black. It got to the point where she nearly died from sepsis and required both of her legs to be amputated. Kelly gleefully documented her whole medical journey on social media, posting hundreds of photos and videos of her progress over the years. But in the end, she reportedly did it all for internet sympathy. After just one date with him in 2018, Arizona woman Jacqueline Adis allegedly sent a man over 159,000 texts over a 10-month span. Some of the texts were incredibly disturbing threats like, "I'd make sushi out of your kidneys and chopsticks out of your hand bones. I'd wear your fascia in the top of your skull and your hands and feet." Adis was later arrested for trespassing inside the man's home while he was out of the country, but she was later declared mentally incompetent to stand trial and the charges were dropped. This is the 2,000-year-old skull of Mary Magdalene on display at St. Maximin Basilica in France. It's considered to be one of the most precious relics in all of Christendom. In 2008, 19-year-old Brandon Swanson drove his car into a ditch while driving home from a party. He called his parents and told them he was fine, but wasn't sure exactly where he was. Nearly 50 minutes into the call, he suddenly yelled, "Oh shit," and then went silent. He's never been seen nor heard from again.
What would you do to him, Beth?
Stab him.
What would you stab him with?
A knife.
Morbid Facts, Part 451. Beth Thomas entered the spotlight at the age of 6 when she was interviewed for the 1992 documentary Child of Rage. After being sexually abused by her father starting at the age of 1, the girl had developed severe psychological issues. During the interview, she admitted to sexually abusing her little brother Jonathan, repeatedly smashing his head against a concrete floor, torturing the family dog, and killing a nest of baby birds. She also admitted to constantly touching herself until her private parts started to bleed. Here's some disturbing footage from the film.
Nighttime, what do your parents do to your door?
Lock it shut.
Why do they lock it shut?
Because they don't want me to hurt John.
And what would you do to him, Beth?
Stab him.
What would you stab him with?
A knife.
And they're kind of afraid of you hurting John? Are they afraid that you might hurt them?
Yep.
Would you, Beth? Would you do it?
Nighttime.
Why would you do nighttime?
Because I don't like them seeing me.
Despite her troubled childhood, Beth later built a successful career as a nurse. In 1973, 16-year-old John Paul Getty III was kidnapped in Rome, with a $17 million ransom demanded from his billionaire grandfather, J. Paul Getty. But the former richest man in the world refused to pay, suspecting that the rebellious teenager was just trying to extract money from his tycoon grandfather. As time went on, the teenager's father pleaded with his dad to send the money, but the mogul argued that his 13 other grandchildren could also become kidnap targets if he paid. However, he was forced to change his tune when the kidnappers mailed Getty his grandson's severed ear and hair as a warning, so the billionaire negotiated the ransom down to $3 million. Paul was safely released after 5 months in captivity, but the experience left him completely traumatized, especially since his captors made him play Russian roulette several times. The teen quickly developed a drug addiction, which eventually led to a stroke caused by an overdose, and Getty was left severely disabled for the rest of his life. In 2012, Donna Summer died from lung cancer at the age of 63, even though she wasn't a smoker. The singer believed it was caused by inhaling the toxic fumes from the Twin Towers after they fell on 9/11, since the dust filled the air around Ground Zero for several months afterwards, and Summer lived nearby. In fact, around 6,400 people have since died from 9/11 related illnesses, more than double the amount that died on the actual day of the attacks. The Dani tribe in Indonesia is known to cut off parts of their fingers after the death of a loved one. In 1928, Alfred Lowenstein, the third richest man in the world at the time, completely disappeared from his private jet in the middle of a flight. After Alfred took too long to use the bathroom, his secretary went in to check on him, but the bathroom was empty and the exit door connected to it was wide open. There have been many theories put forth, but Alfred most likely opened the wrong door by accident and plunged thousands of feet to his death. In 1995, Johnny Depp saved Courtney Love's life after she overdosed outside of a nightclub in Los Angeles. He performed CPR and managed to revive her before paramedics arrived and rushed her to the hospital. Instead of flowers, people bring sticks to the 120-year-old grave of a dog named Rex. In the year 2000, a passenger on a Philippine Airlines flight hijacked the plane and robbed all the other passengers. He tried escaping using a homemade parachute, but was afraid to jump out and needed a flight attendant to push him. His parachute failed to open and he plummeted to his death while everyone else was unharmed. If Laverne accepts this man's proposal, he will make you the happiest woman on earth. A 2-year-old girl from Turkey was heard screaming from her backyard before neighbors rushed over to check on her. When they reached her, they found a bite mark on her lip and a 2-foot-long snake dead in front of her. She'd apparently been bitten by the snake and killed it by biting it back in revenge. Ira Hayes was a Native American Marine who was one of the men photographed raising the American flag over Iwo Jima in 1945. But despite national fame after the war, Hayes suffered from severe PTSD and descended deep into alcoholism. In January of 1955, he tragically ended up freezing to death while drunk in the Arizona desert. In 1958, the U.S. Air Force accidentally dropped a nuke on 4 kids playing in the woods of South Carolina. Thankfully, it didn't have its nuclear core installed yet, but still caused several injuries. Discovered at the age of 18, Susan Peters had a very successful acting career until she was shot during a hunting trip in 1945. Her husband's rifle accidentally fired into her spine, leaving her permanently paralyzed from the waist down. A few years later, one day Peters told her doctor, "I'm getting awfully tired. I think it would possibly be better if I just died." She then starved herself for the next few months until tragically dying from pneumonia at the young age of 31. This is when streaming gets taken way too far. A Russian YouTuber was recently sentenced to 6 years in a maximum security prison after he allegedly caused his pregnant girlfriend to die from hypothermia during a live stream. Known as Stas Reflay, the streamer reportedly forced his girlfriend onto a freezing cold balcony wearing nothing but her underwear. Sometime later, he pulled her back inside and appeared confused, saying, "Chat, she has no pulse, she's pale, she's not breathing." He then laid her lifeless body on the couch, opened up a bottle of liquor, and continued streaming for an additional 2 hours before authorities finally arrived. The streamer's actions were apparently part of a disturbing trend known as trash streaming that's popular in Russia, where streamers perform dangerous or degrading stunts for donations. According to reports, Stas was sent $1,000 by a viewer to watch him abuse his girlfriend. The 34-year-old only ended his stream after police entered his home and pronounced his girlfriend dead. A 23-year-old college student from Taiwan was forced to have both of his legs amputated after suffering severe frostbite that his doctor couldn't believe was real. He claimed it was the result of being stuck outside after a bad motorcycle accident, but the truth was he'd stuck his legs in dry ice for more than 10 hours while trying to pull off a massive insurance fraud scheme. His friend and accomplice tied him to the chair, so he had no choice but to endure the excruciating ice burns. Instead of the $1.7 million payout they were hoping for, both of the young men were sent to prison for insurance fraud. This photo of Samantha Koenig was taken by serial killer Israel Keys to convince the victim's family that she was still alive. so that he could demand $30,000 in ransom from them for her safe return. But in reality, Koenig had already been dead for several weeks, and Keyes had sewn her eyes open using fishing line. The family paid some of the ransom before the killer dumped Samantha's body in a lake and never contacted them again. In 2014, author Richard Britton traveled 500 miles to find a teenage girl who left him a bad review on his recent book, then smashed a wine bottle over her head, sending her to the hospital where she nearly died. Richard was jailed for 30 months following the vicious attack. In 1971, 46-year-old New Jersey accountant John List lost his job at a bank and couldn't stand to tell his family. After a failed job search, List worried that his family would turn away from God due to a lack of stability and therefore miss out on heaven. So he felt he was left with no choice but to murder his entire family and disappear forever. He killed his wife, mother, and 3 children by gunshot before vanishing for the next 18 years. List had planned out the murders so meticulously that nearly a month had passed before anyone suspected that something was wrong. He assumed a new identity in Denver, remarried, and evaded capture for nearly 2 decades, until a neighbor finally recognized him after seeing him on America's Most Wanted. Morbid coincidences. When actor-comedian Red Fox was dying of a heart attack while on set, nobody offered to help him. This is because everyone thought it was nothing more than the fake heart attack act he was famous for. Hungarian man Adam Rayner was barely 4 feet tall for the first half of his life due to dwarfism. But during his 20s, a pituitary tumor caused a dramatic growth spurt, and by age 33, he was 7'2". He's the only person in recorded history to have been both a dwarf and a giant. Alexander I of Yugoslavia refused to make a public appearance on a Tuesday after 3 of his close family members died on a Tuesday. After finally being forced to appear on a Tuesday, he was promptly assassinated. In 1923, 22-year-old jockey Frank Hayes suffered a heart attack and died in the middle of a horse race. But his body remained on the saddle throughout the race as his horse Sweet Kiss crossed the finish line first. It was the first time Hayes had ever won a race, and the last. In 2013, ABC News reporter Amy Rohrbach had a mammogram taken live on TV to promote breast cancer awareness. It just so happened that she did have cancer, and the procedure likely saved her life. After watching a documentary about an apartment that was once used as a torture chamber, Christina McGaw realized she was actually living in the same apartment it happened in. Famous Austrian composer and painter Arnold Schoenberg had extreme triskaidekaphobia, a fear of the number 13. He ended up dying on Friday the 13th at the age of 76. 7 plus 6 equals 13. In the history of Major League Baseball, there have only been 3 players with the first name Aurelio. Amazingly but tragically, they all died in separate car accidents. In Oregon 1970, a dead sperm whale was blown up with dynamite and chunks of its flesh were launched up to 700 feet away. One of the pieces destroyed a brand new car that was purchased during a promotion called Get a Whale of a Deal. A few years after singing the hit song Ain't No Mountain High Enough, Diana Ross lost her ex-husband in a tragic mountain climbing accident. In 1902, the Mount Pelee eruption killed all 30,000 people in a village except for a prisoner who was on death row. He was locked up deep underground in solitary confinement, which served as the perfect shelter from the blast. In 2015, a man swimming near Huntington Beach, California was suddenly struck in the back by a great white. After making it ashore and going to the hospital, doctors assured him that he'd be fine. Upon seeing his x-rays, they realized he had a cancerous tumor that they were just barely able to remove in time. In Bermuda, 1974, 17-year-old Erskine Eben was struck and killed by a taxi driver while riding his moped. Almost exactly a year later, his twin brother Neville was riding that same moped when he was struck and killed by the same taxi driver, carrying the same passenger on the same street. Police believe they've identified the shooter who killed United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, and here's what we know so far. 26-year-old Luigi Mangione was reportedly detained at a McDonald's in Pennsylvania after being recognized by the cashier. Police later discovered that the man had a gun similar to the one used in Thompson's killing, along with a silencer and a fake New Jersey ID. The same ID he reportedly used to check into a New York City hostel just before the shooting. Officers also recovered a 3D printed ghost gun as well as a handwritten manifesto in which Mangione condemns the healthcare industry for prioritizing profits over people. Some of the verbiage in the document was rather violent, including lines like, "These parasites had it coming." The suspect is reportedly known to be a radical anti-capitalist climate activist who idolizes Unabomber Ted Kaczynski. Like Kaczynski, the former high school valedictorian attended an Ivy League college and is said to have an exceptional IQ. Police are now questioning Mangione as they continue to seek further information about the shooting. Well, it turns out the Duke grape scandal was a confirmed massive lie. In 2006, a stripper named Crystal Mangum was hired to perform at a party hosted by members of the Duke University men's lacrosse team. After the party, Crystal claimed that 3 players on the team dragged her into the bathroom before beating, choking, and graping her. The DA who was assigned to the case then conspired with the DNA lab director to withhold crucial evidence that would have easily cleared the players of the accusations. Instead, they were charged with rape, and a public uproar led to the team's entire lacrosse season being canceled, while the coach of 16 years was forced to resign. But the players were exonerated the next year after it was revealed that Crystal was actually just a crazy bitch. A few years later, she was found guilty of second-degree murder after repeatedly stabbing her boyfriend and was sentenced to 14 years in prison. Just recently on a podcast, the still-in-prison former stripper admitted that she made up the entire grape case and has asked the Duke players for forgiveness.